Two, four, six, eight. I hate that. Go!
Welcome to Go Lurk Yourself, a podcast about streaming on the internet. My name is Krunky.
And I am Heretic.
Today we're taking a little bit of a detour, and we're going to do something that we've been talking about since we met, right?
Pretty much, yeah.
We've talked about it briefly on like an episode last year, but for those of you guys who are new to the podcast, Cherry and I actually met. Cherry lives in England, I live in the US, and we met over Twitch. One of the first things we clicked on was our shared love of The Simpsons and Futurama, I think.
yeah, totally true.
I don't remember what it was, some quote that you were dropped or I dropped that we recognized. Do you remember which one it was?
No, I have no recollection of what it was, but I do know it was something quote related.
Yeah, and then it became a game of who could drop the most obscure quote and who can get it by the other person in chat.
Yeah, so true.
A game which we still participate in, I think, daily.
I do know that you have caught me out a couple of times with somewhat very obscure quote.
Usually involves a bit of me Googling to be able to pull that off. For those who don't know, Cherry is one of the best Simpsons trivia people I knew. I thought I was pretty good at it until I met her.
Well, I thought I was pretty good at it until we played that trivia game of yours.
Yeah, we basically went into Tabletop Simulator and made a what was that game? Trivial Pursuit Simpsons Edition, and played it on stream. And I think a lot of that had to do with just luck of the draw. You know, we had Gorby was there, and he's pretty good at Simpsons trivia. Yeah. And he'll admit he got some easy questions too to pull that off. But we know this is a video game podcast, so we didn't want to talk about just the show, but we also did want to talk about the show. So what we did is we found a compromise that we hope you guys will enjoy. Basically, we each picked a video game and our favorite Simpsons episode, at least the one that we decided on for this episode, this podcast episode. There are a couple of great Simpsons podcasts I can recommend. Last Exit. What is the name of the episode that you listen to? The two girls.
Everything's coming up. Simpsons?
Everything's Coming Up Simpsons is a great one. You told me about that one. I think I burned through like every available episode they had in a week.
Yeah. It's really well put together, and the two girls that present it are really engaging and very fun to listen to.
And they pull some good guests. Yeah,
they really do. They've had guest spots from creators from The Simpsons and a couple of the voice actors, I think, as well.
Yeah. And what they'll do is they'll have their guests come on and say, hey, what's your favorite episode? They'll just talk about that episode.
Yeah.
And I think it was that podcast that made me realize how much I love my favorite episode, which the episode I picked was The Last Exit to Springfield.
Nice.
Season 4, episode 17.
What
about you? Which one did you pick?
Mine is Home of the Heretic.
Home of the Heretic? Oh, that's a great one.
Yeah.
And my Simpsons game that I picked was the Simpsons Hit and Run, famous GTA clone set in Springfield. How about you, Cherry?
Mine is just simply the Simpsons arcade game.
Oh, the old stand-up.
Yes, yeah.
Nice. The 4-player co-op, right?
Yep, that's the one.
Awesome. Well, without further ado, I will jump into the Simpsons Hit and Run and just briefly go over what it is, and my time playing it before and my time playing it now, and the difference and how well it's aged. Are you ready, Cherry?
As ready as I'll ever be.
All right. Starting Krunk's game. Just put a little show note there in. So, Simpsons Hit and Run, originally released on multiple consoles, I believe. It was GameCube, PlayStation 2, Xbox, OG Xbox, not Xbox One or any Xbox 360, and Microsoft Windows. I remember playing it specifically on Windows back in 2003. I want to say it came out in September, October. Actually, no, it came out on September 16th in North America in 2003. What were you doing that day, Cherry?
2003, I was finishing college. Oh, I was in my second to last year of college.
But it was on September 16th when it came out. You were in line to get it, right?
Oh, was it actually? Really?
Yeah, that's the day in North America. I don't know about EU.
Yeah, I have to double check that. But... Well, Dee would have got it on her birthday. So
that was the console version. The actual PC version came out in November.
Oh, right, okay.
It was made by Radical Entertainment. I'm sorry to cut you off. What were you saying?
I was going to say, which version did you play it on initially?
I played it on PlayStation first. I want to say I played it on... Or not PlayStation, I'm sorry. What the hell am I talking about? I played it on PC first.
Oh, right, okay.
That was a time when I had a working PC, but it was like I was just getting into building my own. So I went to the store. Literally it came in a box. Like a great big, like it looked like a cereal box. I don't know how big your cereal boxes are in EU, but here they're like massive. And inside it was do you remember the double jewel case DVD and CD holder?
Yeah. Do you mean like one where you opened it and it had like a middle part to it?
Yes, exactly. Yeah. It came on one of those. I still have it to this day.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I'm not a hoarder, I promise.
When was the last time you got it out?
I think when we moved, in 2009 we moved to where we live now, and it's been sitting in like box of my old PC stuff in the closet ever since. I have that, and I have Doom 3 and Doom Resurrection of Evil, those double things. I'm like, those might be worth something because they're probably already old enough to be valuable now, so I'll keep an eye on it.
Hey, no.
I have not pulled up the eBay listings to see how much it goes for. But, so basically, if you've never played Simpsons Hit and Run, it actually has voice acting by the characters. The writers wrote the actual game story, and it takes place in a modified version of Springfield. It's the first legit, like fully explorable Simpsons Springfield I've ever seen in a game. I think there was one like for the PC way back called Virtual Springfield, and I'm talking like late 90s. Virtual Springfield, and it was more of a like Myst, a point and click, and it would like load new screens. But this one actually it was pretty fun to go back. I don't think I ever finished the whole thing because it's very like GTA 3 feeling. I think it's clearly where they got the inspiration. The maps look the same, like the little radar at the bottom right. And it definitely has that PS2 era floatiness in the controls that GTA 3 had.
Yeah.
Did you ever play it, Cherry?
No, it was one that passed me by for some reason, and to say that I'm a Simpsons fan, I'm slightly ashamed to say that I've never played it.
Yeah, I'm a little bit disappointed, to
be honest. Not angry, just disappointed.
So the plot basically is there's these weird things going on around Springfield, including like these flying security cameras. They look like bees. Mysterious surveillance vans that say "Flower by Irene" on them. Tons of inside jokes from the show. These are all references to the show. Crop circles, and then like Buzz Cola comes out with a new and improved flavor, and everyone's suspicious of it. And basically, Homer is tasked with finding all the coins, doing all the missions, and the story is kind of given to you a little bit at a time. But the best part about it is all the inside jokes, the little sight gags. There's tons of callbacks to the show. You have to investigate a crop circle that recently appears under Cletus's crop field, which is Cletus is the redneck from the show. We have to make sure to be very broad about this, Cherry.
Yes.
We'll talk about like third tier characters like they're nothing, but not everybody knows who those are. You end up being able to play as Marge and Bart and Lisa, and I think I read there's like a Maggie couple sections. There's awesome cameos by Kang and Kodos there for a few missions.
Oh, nice.
I mean, just the people I saw. When I went back and replayed it, I probably played it for about 3 hours on stream. And if you ever play an old game on Twitch, like one that doesn't have a lot of views, you get like the people who are still playing that game and have been since 2003.
Proper hardcore fans.
Yeah, like super passionate about the game, and they come in and they're just like, "Oh my god, you're at my favorite spot right now." And I'm like, "Oh, okay." Everyone was super nice and meant well, but it was just like, "You missed the thing back there. Oh, you got if you want to do this, you got to go back and do that." Now I'm like, "Okay, I'm just kind of like playing it super cash, dude. It's gonna be okay."
Yeah.
But this was developed by Radical Entertainment, who made. Have you ever seen Prototype 1 and 2?
I haven't. I know of it, but I haven't actually seen it.
That that developer who's been closed at this point, I'm pretty sure. Yeah, they closed down after Prototype 2. They had like a run of games in the late '90s leading up to this. They made games back from '92. They made a Terminator game for the NES, Adventures of Rocky and Bullwinkle and Friends.
Oh wow.
The developers, I'm sure they're happy about this, behind the infamous '93 Mario is Missing game.
Oh no.
The one that's like
Really?
An educational game. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I remember that one.
Oh yeah, they made Wayne's World, which is a GBA game I've never played.
Yeah.
Bebe's Kids from 1994. Do you even know who Bebe's Kids are?
No, honestly.
It's like it's a side-scrolling beat-em-up game, but it was based on a movie.
Okay.
So you kind of get an idea. They made a Beavis and Butthead game. They made Mario's Time Machine, which is another terrible game. And that's not to shit on Respawn Entertainment, because I think Radical, not Respawn. Respawn makes Titanfall.
Oh.
Radical, they were pretty well known. They had a bunch of big hits. Like they made a Hulk game back in the PS2 era, I think.
Yeah.
Where he'd grab and smash vehicles all around. But I'm getting off track here to tell you that they have a good history of making decent tie-in games, marketing tie-in games.
Yeah.
They made the game right before this one, which was Simpsons Road Rage, which is the Crazy Taxi release. Came out on the GameCube, PS2, and Xbox as well. So this is a natural evolution into what they had been doing up until then. Most reviewers at the time gave this game to be favorable reviews. Like on Metacritic and things now, it's still pretty high.
Wow.
Metacritic gives it basically an 80, which is pretty good. Even I don't know, Cherry, how much you follow the history of reviews, but reviews used to be 6 was good, and like masterpieces were 9 and 10, and a 5 would be average.
Yeah.
But as marketing pushed and dollars pushed all that up, a 7's almost a bad score anymore. So 8 back then was pretty good.
We need to up the ceiling. It needs to be like out of 15 now instead of out of 10.
then a bad game will be 12.
Yeah.
Did you played a lot of GTA 3, right?
Yes, yeah. The GTA. In fact, all of the GTA games were massive influence in my video game history. GTA 3 specifically, because it was the first one that went into the third person mode and let you explore the city. And that.
Oh, so you play the old ones, the top view ones?
I did play the top down view ones. Yeah.
Oh, you're old school then when it comes to GTA. A lot of people don't know about those.
Yeah, like those. I kind of don't consider them as or comparable to the newer GTA games, because obviously they're different, like almost genre. But as like away from the third person games of GTA, the top down ones were so much fun. They really were.
Yeah, I never played the top-down ones. I saw them and just didn't look like something I'd be into. And then when the 3D ones blew up, I got GTA 3. I want to say before that Hit and Run. I don't really remember, to be honest. But I remember my machine could barely run it.
Yeah.
GTA 3 was like had fog in it, and my computer was like, nope, can't do that.
I do remember the frame rate dropping when that got introduced. So, and like when you had too many cars or too much action on the screen, it did struggle.
Oh yeah, big time. And to be honest, I went back and when I played Hit and Run right now, I ran it on an emulator because I couldn't even get the game to install on Windows 10, let alone run.
Oh really?
Yeah, Windows 10 wasn't made with 2003 GameCube games in mind, I don't think.
Maybe not.
On the emulator, I was just toying around with all the different options, and I ran it in like 4K with the highest settings everywhere, and my computer ran it just fine. So I was like, well, it aged pretty well, I guess.
I didn't know you could do it in 4K. That's mad.
Yeah, it depends on the emulator and the ROM. The emulator for GameCube is called Dolphin, and it's very, very feature rich. It has a ton of great options, and like if you go Google around, I'm not going to name any sites because I don't want to support piracy. I own a copy of this game. I just couldn't get it to run because it's old. And sometimes with these older games, you have to, in order to stream it, you have to be able to run it stable. Yeah. And a lot of old games just don't run stable on Windows 10. But what I did, you can go search around and like find settings that people have found that work well, or you can guess and check them yourself, depending on how much time you want to spend on it. But I had a really good time playing it. I went. It was quick to drop off though, because it's an older game. The controls kind of feel like that era. You know, GTA 3 suffered from this as well. Like the car driving was really spotty at best.
Yeah. Specifically, I remember like the camera controls in GTA not being great. They were like manageable, but they weren't as developed. Obviously, not as developed as they are today. So going back to them was a little bit funky.
And that was what this was. And this is a game that like the missions were time based. So you had to drive this, broken shopping cart with two wheels missing through Springfield, and every little change in pitch of the concrete would slow you down, and you could get caught on trees. That was like the frustrating things that came back. I'm actually just reading here on Wikipedia. There was actually a Road Rage 2 in development that Radical was working on, and they had to when they closed down. That stinks. Some of that data was kept and used in the Simpsons game that came out in, 2007? But anyway, that's my experience with Simpsons Road Rage. What game did you pick out again? You said the Simpsons arcade game?
Yeah, mine was a little bit more retro than yours, I guess.
Yeah. Hard to think of 2003 is not retro now, though.
I know, yeah. 2003.
Do you know what year this arcade game came out?
Yeah, this was first released in 91. So
holy cow!
This is going back. I would have been 6 when this first came out.
I would have been older than that.
we know you're old, Crunk. Don't worry.
Yeah, I think I was 91. I had to be like 11 or 12.
Yeah, but you're not that much older.
No.
Do you remember this one?
I do. I stayed with my dad for the summer in Virginia Beach, a place called, if you're from there, it's called Norfolk, but it's pronounced, if you read it, it looks like it says Norfolk.
We have a Norfolk as well, so don't worry.
Okay, yeah. It sounds like you're swearing somebody out when you just tell them, where are you from? No, fuck yourself. But I remember because I loved the show. The show had only been on like a year at that point, right? And it was a massive hit, and Norfolk had a beach shopping center where it had a lot of third-party merchandise selling. So I would go there, and I was always trying to get my dad to buy me one of these like $4 Simpsons shirts, but they all had like drug references on them. Like there was a picture of like a black Bart with gold teeth smoking a joint.
Oh my word!
and just all these like third-party stuff. And I remember at that beachfront arcade, there was an arcade that it was covered, but you could just walk in and had like roll-up doors.
Yeah.
And they had the Simpsons arcade game, and I think I got to play on it once or twice in the several times we went there. Yeah. But it was just people everywhere in there. This was the Street Fighter 2 heyday when the best video games you could play were at the arcade. Home consoles just couldn't keep up with that kind of stuff. What about you?
Similar to what you were just describing then with the what you called a beachfront arcade. We tend to refer to it as a pier, which is it's basically the same thing. You have like a front on the beach where you can go and walk along, and there are various shops selling merchandise and bits and pieces that you can use on the beach and stuff like that. And along with that comes the arcades, which again is the same thing as what you were describing, where they would have stand-up game machines. So this is where I first discovered the Simpsons arcade game. I think it was probably I know it definitely was with my brother and sister, and obviously with being 3 of us, we were kind of limited to what games we could play, where you could all play. So with the game being a 4-player, because you get to play as Marge, Homer, Bart, and Lisa. Basically, the story is that Maggie gets stolen by Smithers. For some reason, Smithers is a real bad guy in this game. Which
yeah, he is.
It's so out of context, it's unreal. She gets like a diamond in her mouth, and Smithers runs off with her. And the premise of the game is that you have to run through various settings in the town trying to find Maggie and recover her. So with the 4 players, yeah, it was me, my brother and sister, and obviously I was the youngest one, so I would always get last pick. So
who did you play as?
Most of the time, I think I was either Lisa. I think I was Lisa because my brother and sister would always choose Homer and Bart because they were pretty much the best ones.
Oh, yeah. Lisa had the yo-yo, if I remember right?
She had a jump rope. You're
Jump
close.
rope, okay.
Yeah.
That's close. Bart had the yo-yo.
No, Bart had the skateboard.
I'm getting my Simpsons games mixed up because I think there was some NES games where he also had a yo-yo. That might be like Bart versus the Space Mutants.
Oh God, yeah, I remember that one as well. And I think that was one I briefly played, but I don't remember too much of.
We should have just done a whole episode of. No. I was gonna say we should have done a whole episode of Simpsons games, but thinking back when we talked about this allows us to have another episode like this in the future if this one turns out to be popular.
Yeah, true. We'll have to go back and play them.
That's right. But so you got to play Lisa, right?
Yeah, which was a lot of fun. I do remember the game. Like the mechanics of the game weren't too in depth. Obviously, this was '91, so things were just developing, I guess, at that point. And I do remember there had been a lot of button bashing. Just because it was no old school stand up arcade machine. You had the old joystick, and then I think there was like maybe 2 buttons.
I'm pretty sure there was a jump and an attack button.
Yeah.
As someone who was a little bit older at the time, there was a genre of arcade games called beat 'em ups, and it started with I'm probably gonna get this wrong. Maybe it didn't start it, but the first one I remember playing was Double Dragon, and those usually had a jump and an attack button, or up was jump and they had a jump or they had a punch and a kick button. So I think with that one there was like a 3D space. So, or sometimes you could hold. There were 3 buttons on some of them, but there were the big popular ones that were the 4 or 5 player, maybe even 6. There was an X-Men one where you could play as bunch of different X-Men.
Yep, played that one as well.
There was a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle one.
Played the hell out of that one as well.
You played all of these. Yeah. Didn't you? I remember when TMNT, the arcade game, came to console. It was like, to be a kid at the time, it was like magic. It's like, wait a minute. I don't have to get in my car and beg my parents for $10 in quarters and go to the arcade to play that game.
See, the thing with that, like, it was the experience of going to an arcade for us because we, right now we don't live in that kind of place where we have regular access to the arcades on the beachfront. So basically, it was during the school time holidays where we would go to my grandparents who lived in that kind of town.
Yeah.
So for us, it was kind of, we would go and visit our grandparents and then they would take us to the arcade. So it was the whole experience to be taken by them and go and play.
An event, right?
Yeah, it was, yeah. And it was, there's a couple of years difference between me and my siblings. So to get us all around one machine and play it together was a real, almost like a bonding experience.
And I could tell just from hearing you talk about it that you look back on that fondly.
Oh yeah, for sure.
I mean, yeah, and that had to impact your love of video games in the future as well, right?
Yeah, definitely playing it at that young an age as well, and it was probably before any kind of home console or ones that we had. We didn't really have. We weren't privy to any kind of console in the house. Yeah. So getting access to video games just for that short period of time had a massive impact on it. And then eventually when we did get I think our first console was the Mega Drive, or the Genesis, what you guys call it. And we had Sonic 2, because it was kind of a 2-player where you could play as Tails.
Yeah.
And I always ended up just spectating because it was only 2 players, so my brother and sister I got to play it.
Yeah, I think you want to have a fight with your brother and sister for holding you out too much.
I do. Yeah.
And this is for not letting me play Tails, jerk.
No, I almost think playing as Tails was just such a kick in the teeth anyway, because he was such a crap character.
So have you heard of Luigi syndrome? Little brother Luigi syndrome.
I wonder if Keys talked about it actually. But, remind me.
There's a bunch of people. I think when we had Keys on, he mentioned it or alluded to it. If he didn't mention it overtly, but basically there are people who grew up as a younger sibling who have a real chip on their shoulder for good reason about getting second player controller, playing as Luigi, because they never got to have they really looked at it as being a privilege and an honor to be Mario or to be player one, or Sonic in this case, whatever.
Yeah.
And they are. I've seen that play out to like they got the cheap Mad Catz controller knockoff because the parents didn't want to spend an extra $10 on an officially licensed one, so they always had to play on the crap joystick. Yeah. They always had to play the crap character.
That's so true.
That's what I hear. I was an older brother growing up, so I don't know the pain, but I can definitely see how that could shape and mold. I adopted the dark, or you adopted the darkness. I was molded by it.
Yeah.
So how far did you guys get in that game?
Oh,
do you remember seeing Mr. Burns?
No.
Okay.
I do remember it being notoriously hard. I don't know if it was just because I was younger at the time and I obviously couldn't grasp the controls as well.
I'm going to guess it's because they wanted you to keep dumping money into it.
Probably, yeah.
Whatever you guys call quarters there. What did your arcade machines take?
Oh, God. I actually can't remember at the time. I think it was like 50p or something like that.
So half a quid?
Yeah, half a pound, yeah.
How many, I'm going to get real in the weeds here because I'm curious.
Go on.
How many different coins do you have in increments? We have 1, 5, 10, 25. We don't have a 50-cent piece. Well, we did in the 70s, but I haven't seen one forever.
We have 1, 2, 5, 10, 20, 50, and a pound.
You have 20?
Yes. We don't have 25.
I just did the head explosion. 20?
Yep.
Wow, that's awesome.
Well, it's divisible, isn't it? So it's all right.
No, it's it's like the metric system. It just makes sense, but we don't do it for some reason.
Every time anyone mentions the metric system, I just hear it in Grandpa Simpson's voice.
Yeah, the episode where he's like, what does he say? I don't remember the quote.
I honestly can't remember what he says, but it's like damn metric system or something like that.
Yeah. That's funny, and like most things in The Simpsons is funny because I know people that are that way from that genre, that era. I remember my uncles and my grandfather teaching me how to work on a car when I was like 15. Yeah. Basically talking about, they have metric tools. Their shop's full of both because if you have a foreign car, you have to know how to work on metric, right?
Yeah.
And they it was, I don't think they actually said it out loud, but they looked down on the metric system visibly in front of me, and I remember going, why? What does it matter?
What?
Why does everybody hate the metric system?
Yeah.
It was just like a cultural thing here. Like, no, we're not going to be damn commies. We're not going to learn the metric system. I think it was tied into like World War II or maybe some phony nationalism bullshit. I don't know.
The stupid thing is that we still have both. We still use both. Like, it's not even a generation thing anymore. We still end up doing in, liters or gallons or yards and centimeters. It's just, for someone that doesn't live in this country, I imagine it's very confusing sometimes.
Well, I think everyone but the United States would be confused, but we don't.
Oh no, like
we have the same problem.
The other countries in the European Union are pretty much formatted.
Yeah.
We just are stupid Britons that like to be different.
Well, we get it honest.
Yeah.
So, what would you say? Did you ever see any of the video or clips of the end of the Simpsons arcade game where Mr. Burns is and his voice is all weird?
Yes, yeah. When I was doing research for this, I sort of skimmed through a playthrough on YouTube, and I watched the ending. Or like the end boss where Mr. Burns is in the mech thing and he's weirdly trying to kill the Simpsons, which again is so out of character. I know Mr. Burns is evil, but that's a little bit too far.
He's more like in it for himself evil, not out to kill everybody.
Well, yeah. Just the Simpsons are in the way.
Right. So what would you say, would you give your game a rating?
It's a tough one because for nostalgic purposes, I would definitely say for me it's probably about a 8 or a 9 out of 10.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I mean, we gotta grade these games on not just how are they playable today, but like for what they were at the time and how we fondly remember them. Yeah. I'd say Hit and Run for me was about a 7 for the same reason that GTA 3 was a 7 for me. I thought the controls were really its downfall. I'm a person who likes to have control over my character, and controls are one of the most important aspects to a story, or to a game, even over the story. Well, and I think that brings us on to talking about our favorite episodes.
Oh.
All right, well, I'll go ahead and go first then and talk about my favorite Simpsons episode, which is called Last Exit to Springfield. I took a bunch of notes, and I'll just kind of start at the beginning. This episode opens up with, it came out in 1993, season 4, episode, what did I say? I think I said it was episode 17. Let me just double check this real quick. Yeah, season 4, episode 17. Let me just make a quick note about that. Take that little gap out. All right. Sorry about that. So, I watched again Last Exit to Springfield, season 4, episode 17, which I didn't realize how much I loved this episode until I went back and watched it again. And like, have you ever had this where you watch something you haven't seen in a while, but you watched it as a kid so many times that like you heard the lines in your head right before all the lines came out?
Yeah.
Like, it was this weird... This happened to me a couple of years ago when I was very young. I was obsessed with this movie called Ernest Goes to Camp. Have you ever seen this movie?
No, I know of it. I have heard the title, but I've not seen it.
Yeah, it's not a great movie, but as a young kid, I loved this movie. I'd go visit my dad, and I'd watch it over and over and over again, like on repeat whenever I'd visit him. It was one of the things I really look forward to doing. We're talking like 6 years old, right? Mm-hmm. And on VHS, by the way.
Oh, wow.
We taped it off cable. But anyway, so I watched this so much. And then for Father's Day, a couple of years ago, maybe 4 or 5 years ago, Molly got this movie for me on recommendation from Deanna on Blu-ray. We had a Blu-ray player. And I watched it, and I'm like, I don't remember this movie at all. I don't remember it like when I was about to turn it on. But as it started to play, like all of a sudden everything came washing back over. Like I remembered every little detail. And it was this weird, like, nostalgic remembrance phenomenon that I'd never really experienced before. And it happened again a couple of nights ago when I watched this episode. Like, oh my God, I know I've seen this episode 100 times, or maybe, hopefully not 100, but probably 100. I used to watch these in the early 2000s when they first came out on DVD.
Yeah.
The box sets, I used to watch them going to bed every night. I sleep with a TV on because I have tinnitus, and it helps me not hear the ringing when I sleep. But it also makes me sleep through alarm clocks pretty easily. But it starts out with a couch gag where the Simpsons run in and sit on the couch, and it turns into like this squid monster that eats them.
Oh yeah, I do.
Everyone knows that one.
Yeah.
They've used that one and reused that one a few times, especially in syndication. Yeah. But there are so many famous. This is why it's my favorite episode. There are so many like classic, famous things that Simpsons fans and even non-Simpsons fans are aware of. This one starts out with McBain, who's playing as Rainier Wolfcastle, who's the Arnold Schwarzenegger knockoff.
Yeah.
Where he's in the ice sculpture and he pops his arms out.
Ice to see you.
Ice to see you. Foreshadowing actual Arnold, who played Mr. Freeze in the Batman movie years later, who had a bunch of cheesy ice puns. That predates that movie.
I tell you,
a lot of people don't realize that.
Something about The Simpsons is that I've heard a lot about them predicting stuff that happened in the future. So they may have been onto something there, Crunk.
Including the current U.S. president.
Yep, I heard about that one.
Yeah. But that episode is, someone on YouTube has cobbled together a clip of all the McBain things over the years, and it is actually all scenes from the same movie if you watch them all at once. Have you seen this?
Yeah, it's like a proper little mini movie, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And it's I don't know if you watch a lot of cheesy 80s action genre movies, but they're like Urge to Kill, Deadpool, not Deadpool that we know today, but there was an old action movie called Deadpool, or The Deadpool.
You know what?
And then
it reminds me of Lethal Weapon.
Yeah, that's in that genre. There's a genre of film that they're parodying right there that is so on the nose it could cover like 15 different movies from that genre.
Yeah.
And that's something the Simpsons do absolutely well. They do direct spoofs and things like that. Like later in this episode, I'll get to they have another Batman spoof, but they can lampoon a genre so bad. I have an embarrassing story to tell you. It's not even embarrassing. It's just funny.
Go on.
So a friend of mine and I were huge fans of, growing up, we would go to the local Blockbuster and we would rent cheesy movies that we would try to find. We'd each rent a movie or two and we'd have a few drinks on a Saturday night. Dee would watch it with us, and we'd have sometimes the other friends would come in and out. But he and I specifically would look for Christopher Walken movies because we thought he was hilarious. And I haven't done it for years, but we watched so many awful movies. But one night we're walking through the Blockbuster, and I'm like, how have I never heard of this? This has got Walken in it. This is like before the internet, or right when the internet was new, and we didn't have the know-how or the means to like Google things for us. In fact, I think Google was pretty new at the time. We found a movie called McBain on VHS.
No way.
And like I was like, what grabbed me was that it said McBain on it, and then I pulled it over, I turned it over, and it has Christopher Walken in it.
Whoa!
I've pulled all these at the movie place, Blockbuster years ago. There was an actual reference book, like on the corner. You could look at movies by actor. You could look them up by genre. It was this really big book. It was gross because so many people used it, but in that book it didn't list this movie, so we had no idea that he was in it. And we watched it, and it was awesome. It was awesome not because it was a great film, per se, but because it was so ridiculously over-the-top cheesy. It had Walken in it. I still watch it here and there because it's so funny. Like, all the it's if you basically pretend it's Rainier Wolfcastle in the role, it's amazing to watch. And I can't think that they didn't know that movie existed, because it was like mid-'80s. So this predates all of The Simpsons, and they call it McBain, or if it's just one of those life-imitating art things again.
No.
But anyway, big recommendation for the actual McBain movie.
I have to go watch that now.
So soon after the opening scene where Ice to Meet You happens, it cuts to young Mr. Burns with his dad or grandfather in the atom smashing refinery.
Oh, yeah. Oh, so many memories.
And Senior Burns pulls out this kid. He goes, "What's that in your pockets?" And he pulls out a magnifying glass. He goes, "It's atoms." Which there's atoms in everything, obviously. And it has the man walled up in the
abandoned Coke factory.
Yeah, and then one of the boys says, "You can't treat people like this. We'll form a union. Then we'll get corrupt, and then the Japanese will eat us alive."
The Japanese, those sandal-wearing fish. Oh,
goldfish tenders.
Oh, that was it. Yes, thank you.
Jesus, I don't know why I took notes. I should just ask you, hey, Cherry, could you please recite the thing verbatim for us?
Bear in mind, I was going to say, we have both chosen episodes from season 4, and I think season 3, 4, 5 are my most watched seasons. Yeah. So these episodes I kind of know inside out. So
4 is when they hit their stride.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah,
I love seasons 1, 2, and 3. Don't get me wrong, but 4 was like everything. The engine's firing on all cylinders. Yeah. Everything's working, and they're just churning out gold. And even in 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, all good. There's some high and low spots, and I think 10 on is where it kind of like petered out.
Yeah.
But, so they're talking about a union, and the dental plan comes up, and it cuts to Lisa at the dentist office, and she, the dentist is like, "Hey, Lisa, have you been brushing your teeth? Have you been flossing?" And she goes, "Yes." And the dentist, who's like this comic villain, says, "Why must you turn my office into a house of lies?"
I was the guy that plays. I don't know who was the voice actor for him, but he's so good at delivering those lines.
So here's funny, something funny. The creepy orthodontist, the producers tried to get Anthony Hopkins or Clint Eastwood.
Didn't Anthony Hopkins turn it down?
Yeah, he turned it down, and so did Clint Eastwood.
Oh, no way.
So they finally got Anthony Perkins, the original Psycho.
Oh, wow.
To do it, but he passed away before they got it recorded, so it was Hank Azaria that ended up doing the role.
Wow.
And I mean, that's just Hank Azaria. He just he's a Band-Aid on that show. Everything awesome he does. There's been, I think you and I were talking about the other day, a new scandal where they don't want him to play the voice actor anymore. Have you heard about this? For Apu?
There was some controversy around Apu and the stereotypes that he projects apparently on the show. I don't know if Hank Azaria has declined playing him anymore. I don't know about that.
So this is one of the interesting things in my life. I can remember older people who would get upset about change, and this is something that happens to everybody, I'm sure, but this is me becoming an older person facing modern sensibilities. Is it notorious? Is it, horribly racist for Hank Azaria to play up a stereotype of this character? Yeah, probably if you're from the Middle East, if you're young and you don't watch the show, you never watch the show, and let's say you're 12 years old right now and you're from the Middle East and you turn on The Simpsons in America and you're like, oh my God, that is horribly over the top racist. And Hank Azaria, to his credit, said, hey, I'll be happy to step aside and let someone who actually can do him justice do his voice. So I think that's great that he's open to it. As much as I am very nostalgic for Hank Azaria doing that voice, I was also young when I watched this and didn't really see it through those eyes of what it would be like for a young person to see that and be like, oh, is this what everybody in America thinks I am?
Yeah. It's just like anything that it was a different time. So obviously things have developed and things have changed. So fair play. If he feels like it's not the right thing to portray, then that's fair enough.
Yeah, I agree with you. So moving on, so we cut to a scene of them popping a keg at a union meeting where they nominate Homer to be the head of the union.
You can't even get this out.
I know, it's so funny.
It's
yeah, and then obviously they're like, hey, all we have to do is give up our dental plan and we get this keg of beer for our meeting. And everyone's like, who needs a dental plan? And all of a sudden, what happens, Sherry?
Dental plan.
Lisa needs braces.
That's really funny.
That goes on repeat in his head for like a comical amount of time as to illustrate how slow his brain works.
And what I love about that scene is that it's just concentrated on his face for a stupid amount of time. And then with just looks like a vacant expression. And then it just cuts to the back of him. And then what happens?
He like works it out, right? He says, wait, if we give it the... Oh, go ahead. Tell me what I'm missing. Carl drops a pin in Homer's ass crack. Yeah. Okay. I wasn't sure if that happened before or after.
It happens before because then he turns around and says, thanks a lot, Carl. Now I've lost my train of thought. And then goes back to dental plan. Lisa needs braces. And then slowly works it out.
And that's where then it cuts to him talking to Marge. And we see the "Where's my burrito" scar. Do you remember that part?
I got this one sneaking under the door of a pig toilet.
And it cuts to him getting a scar where he's pounding on the...
Where's my burrito? Yeah, it's like a food truck, yeah.
And the awning collapses on his head.
I forgot how good this episode was.
I'm telling you, I'm going to make a case for it. But So this next bit sent me down an internet rabbit hole. I'm watching it and shows Homer's like making his case. We need to keep a dental plan. How else would you have had that diamond in your tooth? And it shows Lenny with his diamond in his tooth. Do you remember this? Yep. And someone pulls it out, steals it, and says yoink.
Oh, yeah.
And I thought my first question when I saw it is like, was this the first yoink? Because they use yoink whenever they steal something in the episode. And you'll be glad to know there is a Simpsons archive yoink list.
No way.
Which is a little bit different than what you think it might be. And it's got 1, 2, 3, I mean like 20 something on here. And immediately calling into suspect the accuracy of the yoink list. This is not on it.
What?
I know. Actually, no, it is. It is. They're anonymous voice taking the diamond out of Lenny's tooth. This was the second one.
What was the first one?
They code the name the episodes by like the script numbers.
Oh, right, yeah.
So the first one was Homer snatching a wad of money from Marge in the episode previous to this, which I don't know what it is.
Give me a second, I'll check it out for you.
Yeah, but yeah, the newest one, Mr. Burns says yoink when he takes the $1,000 bill from Bart in
Duffless.
Whatever episode that was.
Yeah, I do remember that because she goes through his pants and says, "Oh, look at all the money you've saved," and then Homer yoinks it and tries to head down to Moe's bar. Yeah.
Exactly. What's really funny is this list goes on, and this could be indicative of why the show started to go a little bit south after season 10. The number of like all-star or like celebrities that you see saying this. here's people who said yoink on The Simpsons: Mark McGuire, Mel Gibson, Ron Howard, Andre Agassi, and I think that's it. That's it according to this list. I don't know how up to date it is, but anyway, it just dawned on me that there's so much minutia in this show that you can really get down in the weeds.
Yeah.
So, so Homer, they're like, Homer, you should be our union rep, our what do they call it, union boss, and he's like, what's this job pay? Nothing, unless you're crooked. And Homer goes, woohoo! Was it Carl that answered him? Said nothing.
I think it is Carl. Yeah, I will say, it was Carl or Lenny. I can't remember. When I first watched this, when I initially watched this when I was younger, I didn't understand what that was referring to when it says unless you're crooked. I didn't know what that term meant.
Unless you're like a mafia don or something.
Like, taking bribes and that kind of stuff. I didn't understand it, but the way it's delivered, it was still funny.
It was, and Homer immediately has this mental image of himself as Don Homer with it's a scene right out of The Godfather where he goes and gets a donut, gives it to him, he's like, grazie. It was speaking of racist.
Yeah. Racist stereotypes, yeah.
Oh, racism's funny. Stereotypes funny. So we go to back to the dentist office, and Lisa's looking at the invisible braces, right? And they find out on the new dental plan or without the dental plan, she has to get these this headgear, and he's like, these predate stainless steel, so you can't get them wet. It's like, how does something in your mouth not get wet? I know that's the whole joke. So that sets up the whole Homer is the mob boss or mafia don union boss versus Mr. Burns, and Mr. Burns is taking this super seriously, but you have what I think may be the first gay panic episode or gay panic stuff that happened to The Simpsons. Do you remember this?
Yeah, in Mr. Burns' office when they're having a conversation.
Yeah, Homer's, Mr. Burns is saying some just stuff about the dialogue about, hey, you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours. And you hear Homer in his head go, wait, is he coming on to me?
Oh my God, I think he is coming on to me.
Yeah, negotiations make for strange bedfellows.
And then I love that cut to Homer where his eyes go wide, and you just see his eyes go wide, and in his head scream. You don't see any of the reaction. It's such a good shot.
And then Homer says, sorry, Mr. Burns, I don't go in for these backdoor shenanigans. Sure, I'm flattered, maybe a bit curious, but the answer is no.
Yeah.
And I was listening to an episode of the Small Beans podcast where they were talking about the Coen brothers' first movie called Blood Simple. I don't know if you've ever seen it.
No, I don't think so.
But I saw it years and years ago. The same friend that we'd go rent movies at Blockbuster, we watched a bunch of early Coen stuff together too. But this movie specifically, the whole premise of the movie, everyone's talking about one thing, but the characters are hearing what they want to hear. Like, it applies to what they think is going on, and it's one of the movies that it's real hard to figure out what's really happening, because it depends on which character you're following, what you think is going on until the very end. And that's what this whole interaction between Homer and Mr. Burns is Homer thinks he's talking about a come on line, and Mr. Burns thinks he's talking about the union stuff, and they never resolved that, because the answer to the question was no. Mr. Burns had no idea what was happening.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Oh, man. So we cut back to Lisa's at the dentist, and you hear the dentist saying, scraper, poker. And then he pulls out this thing and goes, this happy little fellow is the gouger. I have to ask you, as a kid watching this, when they pulled out the big book of British smiles, was that offensive to you? As someone from England, did you go, wait, what? Were you aware that that's a stereotype in America to make fun of British teeth at the time?
No, at the time I don't think I was. I am now, obviously, but I think just for the visual, I think it was just funny.
Right. Yeah. But now you're pissed and you're on the show because of it, right? Not the last 15 seasons of trash. It's this particular part right here that makes me mad. So Lisa's gassed and starts having this psychedelic trip.
God, I forgot about this part.
Has the Beatles in there. Look, it's Lisa
Look,
in
fellas,
the sky.
It's Lisa in the sky. No diamonds, though.
No. Your British accent is way better than mine. For some reason. I don't know why. Now, do you get this next scene when she's like, mirror, mirror? Do you know what that's from?
At the time, I didn't, but you alluded to it. It's a Batman reference?
Yeah, the 89 Batman with Michael Keaton and Jack Nicholson.
Yeah, see, that's a Batman that I haven't seen as far as I know, so the reference kind of went over my head.
You might enjoy watching it. It's a little bit slower paced than modern action movies, but it's better for it.
Yeah.
It has some really interesting decisions for it, but it was made in a time when there were no superhero movies. It was a big swing, and it connected. I can remember as a kid hearing Michael Keaton's going to be Batman, and I'm like, what? That doesn't make any sense. He was like a leading man style, sitcom type deal.
Yeah.
But, so we'll cut to Homer. I don't remember now whether he's at home or whether he's in the office, and we hear a knock on the door. Who is it?
Goons. He's at home.
He's at home. And he goes, Goons? Hired goons.
Still to this day, me and my sister use that quote.
Do you?
I don't even know why.
Now you know why? Because
it's just funny.
And then Mr. Burns is like, I appreciate the hands-on results of hired goons. Like,
and then he's like, hired goons? You don't remember that part?
Refresh my
It's
memory.
like in that same little part where the goons have delivered Homer to Mr. Burns, and Mr. Burns is talking about what you just said. He quotes that the hands-on.
Do you remember what their? Go ahead.
What were you gonna say?
I said, do you remember what their names were?
No, you got me on that one.
Crusher and Lowbro. Oh my God! Yeah, the telephone is so impersonal. That's what you're gonna go for, right?
Also, in that little scene, you remember is it the bird or the eagle or something that he's got on his shoulder or next to him? It actually looks like Mr. Burns as well.
Yes, I do remember it. I don't remember exactly what he shudders, just the same way Homer or Mr. Burns does. And then he's giving him the tour, and he goes, "This is 1,000 monkeys working on 1,000 typewriters. It was the best of times. It was the blurst of times." And it smacks him. "You stupid monkey!"
And then the monkey goes crazy. Oh wow!
Yeah, starts screaming. He's like got a cigarette in his mouth and everything.
Oh.
And then the scene ends with Homer and Mr. Burns talking, and Homer's like, "I really need to pee." Where does he tell him to go? Do you remember?
It's like the 23rd door on the left or something.
Oh my God, you had that
Seriously?
so accurate.
Yes.
It is. And then he comes back and he's like, "Did you find the bathroom all right?" And Homer's like,
Yeah. See, again, one thing with this that didn't resonate is when he came back and delivers that line, I didn't understand that he hadn't found the bathroom and just gone somewhere, in any room that he found. That didn't register with me what he'd done.
Yeah, I mean, I guess when you're really, really young, you might not, sarcasm's tough to decipher, or deception. That's not really sarcasm. But so then we cut to Lisa going to with her teeth, with her head apparatus on, for her yearbook photo. And come on, you could smile for me. It's all right. And when she smiles, do you remember what he said?
There's no God.
That's dark for an animated sitcom. So Homer calls for a strike, and then we've got Lisa playing the strike music, which is pretty notorious. Come gather all ye children, it's high time you learned about a hero named Homer and a devil named Burns. Yep. And then this is why this is the best episode they ever made. Grandpa's telling them a story of, oh yeah, I used to be in the Minutemen, not Minutemen. Talks about being in a union. He goes, "Yeah, but we can't bust heads like we used to."
But we have our ways.
And he goes, he said, "I tied an onion to my belt." Was from the same line. "Give me 5 beefs for a quarter," they'd say. This was all part of this episode. I mean, that's a meme of all of its own. The onion thing. Even people who don't know what the Simpsons know about. Was the style at the time to tie an onion to my belt. Do you remember how this episode ends?
Homer gives up power, I guess. One part I do remember is where the woo 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 came from, wasn't it? Where he lands on the ground and then does a circle around himself. It's in the board.
He's like running on the floor.
Yeah, I do remember that part.
That's from the Three Stooges, if you didn't know.
Oh no, I didn't know that.
Yeah, there's so many things. Like I remember as watching the show, so many things I didn't get the first viewing that I picked up later on. The Simpsons and Futurama were one of the first shows that made me realize there was something to be gained through repeated viewings. Either things I missed or things I didn't understand that references I got later, or things that I would know a Simpsons episode very well, and then I would see a reference to it I'd remember, oh, that's what they were spoofing.
Yeah.
And that's one of those things. Like, how many episodes of The Three Stooges have you ever watched?
None. I don't think we ever got it over here.
Yeah, so yeah, you how would you know? It was a black and white. I think they did switch the color at the end, but slapstick comedy thing that it's very divisional in the United States. Yeah. This is probably horribly sexist to say, but I've noticed guys tend to like it, girls don't. Now, I know there's going to be some girls who love it and some guys that hate it. I know that, but that's been my observation in my lifetime that it's been very one-sided, and some people like hate it because their spouse or someone that they knew loved it so much that they got sick of it.
Yeah.
But well, that's pretty much the end of my episode. Everything gets resolved. Lisa gets her invisible braces, and
they all start laughing, and then the dentist.
They realize they have the laughing gas on.
I left the gas on.
And they all laugh at that. No, seriously, this could kill us. They all laugh at that.
Yeah. Oh man, I honestly forgot how good of an episode that was. I haven't seen it in such a long time. But there's so many cultural internet memes that have been born from that, I guess.
So what I want everybody listening to this to do is go on to Twitter at the end of this episode. Don't do it now, but get ready. After Cherry tells you about her favorite episode and we discuss it, I want you to go on and tell us which of these two episodes was better in your opinion, and then what your favorite episode, if it wasn't one of these, even if it was one of these, tell us what your favorite episode is. So vote for which one you like the best, and then tell us which one is your favorite if it's not one of these two.
I'm kind of thinking that
the winner will get the winner will get a healthy round of applause.
Yeah, through the internet.
So without further ado, Cherry, would you tell us about your episode?
Yeah, I chose... this was a hard one to pick. Obviously, being a Simpsons fan yourself, there's so many good episodes to choose from, and I was stuck between two of my favourite ones that I do remember, both... I think one was from season 3, actually, which is Lisa the Greek, which is where Lisa helps Homer gambling on American football, and...
we just call it football here. You don't have to say American.
Okay, all right.
I'm joking.
How dare you? American football. And the one that I actually chose in the end, which is from season 4, which is Homer the Heretic. This is episode 3 in season 4, and it was released on October the 8th, 1992. So, yeah, it was the same season as yours, but obviously before. From the very get-go of this, one thing that stood out for me is the chalkboard gag, which is a reference to the episode before it, which was A Streetcar Named Marge, which is a kind of a dig at New Orleans. It had some pretty, I don't want to say hateful, but harsh lyrics in the song that is in the play at the end. And obviously, New Orleans didn't take very kindly to it, so they got some backlash. Whoa. Yeah, they got a bit of backlash for that. But in the chalkboard gag in this episode, it's I will not defame New Orleans. So, there's a bit of a callback there, which I think is quite nice for The Simpsons to do.
I tell you, I didn't pick up on it when I watched the first time, for sure.
Yeah. I don't think that was, again, like what you were just saying, I don't think I picked up on it the first time I watched it, but after reading about it and the stuff behind the episodes, it came to light, which is really cool. I like The Simpsons for doing that, for putting all these little in-jokes or references in the episodes themselves. It's really cool.
Yeah, they're very self-referential.
Yeah. So basically, this episode... are you aware of this episode, Crunk? Do you know this one?
Yeah, I'm very well aware. I love that you had to ask me that. There is not an episode in season 1 through 10 that I don't know backwards and forwards, to be honest.
I just, when I was thinking about it, I was thinking that this isn't one of the front runners of the season. There's definitely some more well-known ones, especially the one that you've just done, Last Exit to Springfield. So I was just curious to see how well you knew this one.
Well, I know. Here's how well I know this episode. This was the first episode where the animation was produced by Film Roman,
Yes.
a different production
Yeah.
company, who was known for one of my favorite shows as a kid, Garfield and Friends from '88,
Oh, wow.
and Bobby's World, who Dee absolutely loved that show, and from the '90s.
Oh, wow. But yeah, right on the money there. So basically, for people that don't know this episode, it's one in where Homer decides to skip church because he has a bad run of fortune, unfortunately. At the beginning of the episode, a few things happen, and he ends up staying at home and has an amazing day, according to himself. Marge becomes quite concerned for Homer and feels like he will incur the wrath of God for not going to church, obviously. So that happens, and I'll get into the plot a little bit more. So the beginning of the episode, it opens with Homer, baby Homer, inside a womb, obviously animated, and he's swimming around, and he's happy and free, and he's all nice and warm and snug as a bug. And then we see a hand reach inside and grab his leg and try to pull him out. He grabs onto the inside of the womb itself and tries to stop himself from getting pulled out, which then cuts to the real life, and Homer in bed with Marge trying to pull his leg and get him out of bed for church. The infamous line, which I always think, it always makes me laugh, where Marge is saying to him, "Homer, get up, it's time for church." And Homer responds with, "No, I'm all naked and wet." Homer refuses to get up because it is ridiculously cold outside. We then see a polar bear trying to go through the trash, and it's way too cold. I can relate to that so much.
You a lot of polar bears there.
Oh, yeah. Yes, I went, nah, the cold outside, you, nah. And then, along with that, with it being ridiculously cold outside, Homer rushes to get dressed for church and pulls on his trousers, pants, forcefully, and ends up ripping them in the back. And then that's when he decides he is going to...
That's it.
Stay at home. What?
Yeah.
Sorry, I thought you were...
No, I was going to say, I remember the exact line. He's like, "That's it. The whole thing's off. I'm not going."
Yeah.
I've tried real hard not to cut you off. I feel like I cut you
No,
off too much.
no, please do. I did it to you, so any lines that you remember, feel free to throw in. If I don't get there first.
Do it. Yeah, I don't think that's possible.
So this ends up with Homer skipping church. It ends up with like a little montage of what he's doing during the day compared to how bad of a day that the rest of the Simpsons are having in church. I do have a bit of trivia. Actually, I have a question for you, Crunk, actually.
Yeah.
You remember in this little montage where Homer's at home, he is making a waffle? Do you remember what the waffle's called?
His world famous moon waffle, of course.
Oh, so close.
What is
It
it
is
called?
a patented space age out of this world moon waffle.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
That he proceeds to wrap an entire stick of butter.
I was going to ask, do you remember the ingredients for that?
Let's see. I know liquid smoke is
Yes.
on there.
You've only got butter.
He wraps butter. I don't know.
There's
the rest,
just
no.
two more. One is caramel and one is waffle batter. So
Oh,
you're
okay.
halfway there.
I knew the waffle batter, but I thought that was obvious. I was just trying to think. I thought it was like sugar, and so caramel is what he puts in there.
Yeah, because he rips open the bag and then like little cubes of caramel fall out and go into the waffle maker. Waffle runoff. Yeah, so along with making his patented out of this world moon waffle, Homer partakes in, which I didn't actually realize at the time, but after researching this episode, throughout the episode it is showing Homer going through the 7 deadly sins, which I thought is it never occurred to me that was happening.
Actually, I didn't pick up on it the first few times I watched it, but as I grew a little older, I started to realize, I'm like, okay, that's too good to not be on purpose.
Yeah.
that he has sloth, gluttony, greed,
Ooh.
wrath, envy, lust, and pride,
yes.
Right?
Well done.
Yeah.
Someone went to church.
Not bad for someone who hasn't been to church in 2 decades. Ever since I joined Homer's new religion, I stopped going.
Hey, it's a good religion.
Except for when your house catches on fire and you need a ninja Flanders to save you.
Yeah, we'll get to that. Okay, so yeah, as well as Homer making the waffle at home, he ends up like looking out on everything he does. So he enters a phone contest, and wins it. Do you remember the quote on this one, Grant?
Let's see. I didn't watch this episode. I should have. So I haven't seen it in a couple of years. I want to say. No, I don't. Tell me what it is.
Basically, he rings up the radio station that is doing the promotion, and it's from an artist or a singer called Johnny Calhoun, and they request someone to ring in and tell them his controversial, I think, second album, the name of it, and Homer rings up and says he actually has it and reads it wrong. It says he says to the radio station, "This things I believe," which is actually "these things I believe," and you hear them on the other end of the line saying, "Can we accept that?" And then you get a cha-ching, and then obviously Homer's won.
Does he say it's KBBL, right?
I'm assuming it would be,
because that's their call letters are Babel for talk radio. But the what does he say? We have a wiener. Doesn't he say we have a wiener there? Or is that a different episode I'm thinking of?
It might be this one. I can't remember actually. No, actually no.
Anyway,
that's a different. That's the Homer gets an elephant episode.
Oh, that's right. That's right. We've seen too many episodes.
We really have. They're all merging into one. So along with him winning the phone contest, he also manages to stumble across a football game on TV, which was initially like some boring news program. And
that's a win.
Apparently, yes, for you guys at least, anyway. And after that, he dumps his beer can on the floor, and upon looking down, he finds a penny, which I don't think is a massive amount of currency, but he counts it as a win. Which this plays into the greed category, because he compares it to other days in his life which have been epic, which include one dancing in an overturned beer truck that's spraying beer on him, and his wedding day. So it's like, looks like we have a new winner. Winning a penny. I mean, finding a penny, like, that trumps his wedding day.
Yeah, that's Homer for you.
Apparently, yeah.
Well, I think it all illustrates that he's trying to convince himself that what he's doing is right.
Yeah.
So that's why it's so over the top ridiculous.
Yeah. So the family, after having a pretty bad day at church, which it also includes Reverend Lovejoy giving a pretty boring sermon, and also being stuck inside the church because the doors have frozen over, and also the car not starting very well. Marge gets a little bit ticked off at Lisa for trying to suggest something, and obviously snaps at her. So they come home, and she has a conversation with Homer, but it doesn't really go the way that she was hoping, and it ends with Homer declaring that he's going to give up his religion, to which, Marge is quite concerned about.
They get in a fight, right? Homer and Marge get in an argument about it.
I can't remember where it is that he imagines God. Dreams of God, sorry. Let me just have a look.
No problem.
Oh, yeah. Right, okay.
Okay. Go ahead.
Right. So they have a discussion where Homer says he's going to never go to church again, and it ends up being that night Marge is in prayer for Homer's religious sanity, I guess, and Homer even though he declares, I can wait all night, instantly falls asleep. Yeah, because he's that kind of guy.
Who hasn't been there?
I can wait all night. Yeah. And his dream is about God. He actually appears in front of him. Initially, he starts pretty angrily, rips the roof off the house where Homer is. But for some reason, God seems very coercive, and Homer manages to talk him round in saying that, oh God, I'm all over the place here. There's just so many things that I keep want to go back and forth about.
Yeah, you want to talk about this part that happened here, then you want to talk about this other part, but it's, well, wait, thematically it makes sense to talk about this first. I get it.
Oh, yeah. So he's talking to God, and he talks him round. Obviously, God's not very happy. He declares to him, why have you forsaken my church? To which Homer replies, which I am quite on board with this, I'm not a bad guy. I work hard and I love my kids, so why should I spend half my Sunday hearing about how I'm going to hell? Why not?
God's like,
yeah.
Good point.
God agrees. You know, why should you spend half your Sunday hearing some really boring minister just going on and on? So, Homer decides at that point to, I guess, pursue his own religion, and hoping it works out. Also at this point, he is pictured in Moe's bar, and he comes up with it's not an excuse, I guess, in his eyes, but a reason not to go into work. Do you remember what the holiday is, Grant?
The Feast of Maximum Occupancy.
Well done, well remembered.
That was a great one.
Yeah. So the episode progresses, and it gets to a point where Homer is probably at the top of just the ultimate glutton, greed, envy, anything that is on the sins. And he is seen at home, lying on the couch, and is reading a play, dude. Yeah. Which, again, actually, well, when I first saw this, there was something in this that I didn't understand at the time, which is a quote that he says, which is, our unabashed dictionary describes an IUD. Was it an IUD?
I don't remember.
I can't remember what it was.
This is something he's reading out of the magazine?
An IUD as love springs internal. And I didn't understand that, but I think it's...
I don't understand it now.
I think it's a form of contraception.
I know IUD is in uterine device. Yeah. Love springs internal. Okay, so internal. So, okay, I guess I get it. I didn't know IUDs were a thing back then.
Apparently they were. Yeah.
Wow. That's got to be a play on a popular...
Well, I know the quote is love springs eternal, but I don't know what they were particularly referencing in like the beginning. I guess it was just because it was a play, dude. They were just trying to work a...
Well, I mean, I think that what they're saying is an IUD means you can, basically have guilt-free sex.
Yeah, I think that's probably what they're getting at, yeah.
Yeah. But, wow. I see the show that keeps on giving. I've seen this episode multiple times. Yeah. I never thought to look it up.
Well, again, it's quite an adult thing to be included.
Yeah.
In what I don't know what your class is, like a children's cartoon.
Yeah, I mean, this was on primetime television, so it had to, or was supposed to play safe with children audiences. But
on the flip side of that, just as I said then, I didn't get that when I was younger. So adults that were watching it at the time would. So they would have something to connect with in that sense, whereas it would just go straight over the kid's head.
Yeah, like that layers philosophy of having something for every layer of your audience.
Yeah. Homer is on the couch reading, and he eventually just dozes off with a cigar in his mouth. Oh, actually, no, before I get to that part, one part before that is where we see Homer in a Pooh's store, and he's buying a crate of beer and some cigars, which is where you get the cigars from. And he turns to Apu and says, I see you're not in church. And to which Apu replies, oh, but I am. We have, I can't remember, a statue of Ganesha in the employees' lounge. And Homer goes to look at it and then turns around to Apu and says, no offense, Apu, but when they were handing out religions, you must have been taking a whiz.
So we were just talking about being offensive to Apu and his people.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh my god.
So cut to back when Homer's on the couch, he's smoking a cigar and declares that everyone is dumb except him, and proceeds to fall asleep with the lit cigar in his mouth. It falls off and onto his surroundings and begins to catch fire. I have a question for you. Do you remember what actually blew up in the basement that caused the massive fire?
Oh man, was it a can of gas?
No, not quite. It's along that line.
I don't remember.
It's a box of oily rags.
Okay, yeah. It's been a while.
Because that's something that you would keep. I don't know why.
A box of oily rags. Why would you? Oh man.
So the house catches fire, and obviously Holmes he's got an issue, which brings me to again one of the funniest lines that I remember from this episode, where there's a little flame that burns the two strings of hair on his head and burns off, and he wakes up and then starts coughing, obviously because there's smoke and around him, and then he panics for a moment and then realizes, I just have to remember the song. Do you remember the song?
No, I don't. Man, you're really calling me out today.
It's when a fire starts to burn, there's a lesson you must learn. Something, something, then you'll see. You'll avoid catastrophe.
Yeah, he doesn't know the most important line.
Shouts dough and then passes out on the floor. But just that little 4-line song made me laugh so hard when I remember it, because, like you say, he remembers everything else apart from the most important part of the song to avoid catastrophe.
Oh man!
So he's passed out on the floor. He looks like he might meet his maker again, I guess. Fortunately, with Apu not being in church, but he is in church at the store, he spots that his house is on fire from a distance. And fortunately, Apu is the chief of the Springfield's volunteer fire department. Yeah. So he gathers the other participants, which includes Krusty, Chief Wiggum, and Barney, actually. I think Otto's on there as well. I remember him flailing at the back.
Yeah, one of the things that I particularly noted upon rewatching this is that like all religions were involved in saving him, so they weren't picking sides there.
Which is something that they mention at the end.
Oh, they do? Okay.
When they put out the fire and everything's fine, and they're in the Simpsons kitchen, they're all having a coffee, and Homer apologizes to Reverend Lovejoy and everyone else. And Lovejoy goes around the room and says, despite of what religion we are, we were willing to help you, regardless of Christian, Jewism, or I can't remember what he says, Judaism even, Jewism.
Yeah.
And miscellaneous. And again, that's another dig at Apu.
Yeah, he says, I'm Hindu, there are 40 million of us, or something
exactly,
like that.
So, that's just super.
And I thought that was a huge opportunity missed by the snake handler people, because they could have had Mo
Oh,
there, too.
yeah, they could have,
I was born a snake
die
handler,
a snake handler.
die a snake handler.
Yeah, that's in this episode,
Yeah, it is when he's at the bar during the Feast of Maximum Occupancy.
Yeah.
I was reading about this episode. There was a fan convention called the Feast of Maximum Occupancy.
Really?
And they had it on June 5th because maximum occupancy of Moe's Bar was 65.
Oh, nice.
And in America, the month goes first, so it was these 65.
Oh, that's cool. So they all disperse, and Homer, vows to give religion another try, and he ends up being in church next week. Unfortunately, he doesn't really amend his ways and ends up, snoring ridiculously loud, in which he ends up dreaming again, and God appears again in his dream. And, God's like, don't worry. How many? 9 out of 10 religions fail on the first try?
Which is like a actual quote about business.
Is it really?
Not religion.
I see. I never knew that.
Yeah.
And a little bit of information about this end part, actually. There's Jimi Hendrix and Benjamin Franklin playing air hockey. And if you notice that only Benjamin Franklin talks, originally Jimi Hendrix, or the voice actor that was going to do Jimi Hendrix, did have lines, but they couldn't find anyone that sounded like him to say the lines properly, so they just cut it out, whereas obviously Benjamin Franklin died like years and years ago, so no one really...
At least a few years anyway.
No one really recalls what he sounds like, so they just cut out Hendrix's lines on that part. And then at the end of it, what they initially had set up for it to end as, Homer is asking God what the meaning of life is, and continues to pursue him. It's like, you can't wait 6 months.
You won't find out till you die. And he goes, I can't wait that long. You can't wait 6 months?
No, tell me now. So what they had planned to do is, you never hear the meaning of life from God. It always gets cut off. What they had worked out as to happen was when God gets cut off, a Fox promo was meant to come in at that point and cut him off, as in, God's about to tell you the meaning of life, but it's cut off by some stupid promo for another show. But Fox apparently never picked up on it and didn't do it like that, so it kind of ends weird with just, he just gets cut off and there's nothing else there.
I say it still worked because I remember watching this episode new when it was aired, and I picked up on it as a joke of, obviously they're not going to tell you what the meaning of life is. Did you read the trivia about this, the meaning of the 6 month, why he said 6 months?
I have something about the 6 months, but I don't know if it's the same.
Go ahead.
So obviously when he mentioned 6 months from that air date, I looked it up, and the episode that is 6 months from that point is Homer's Triple Bypass.
No,
I know it's a different one. Yeah.
It was the clip show.
Yeah, where he is it the point where he passes out in Mr. Burns's office, and then his Oh no! Sorry, that's Triple Bypass that I'm thinking of. Sorry.
It is. No, it's the episode's called "So It's Come to This," the clip show. Which I don't know if you're aware, but that was notoriously like the death knell of a TV show back in the day. If they did a clip show, because it was like a obvious cost savings maneuver. Instead of refilming or animating or refilming a bunch of crap, they'd bring people in for like 5 minutes and set up this clip show to just be nothing but clips. It's more popular in the 80s, I think, in syndicated TV. And it was usually the sign that a show's funding had been cut back. Mm-hmm. But I thought that was pretty interesting that they would have because they know what episodes are coming out 6 months from now, right? It takes a long time to produce it. That they were worried that would be the death of the show. So why did you like this episode?
This episode in particular, it's not really one that I can relate to it on a certain level, because when I was younger, I went to Sunday school. So I remember we got put in Sunday school because we weren't really old enough to go, or we weren't patient enough to sit through church. So we got dropped off at that while my parents went to the church next door. So I do recall sometimes having to be physically dragged out of the house to go to this place. So I can relate to Homer's feelings on that. But I think more so because it's just one that I remember watching over and over and over and over. when it was first, when you were talking about when DVDs came out, this one in particular on this season, that was one that I always went back to. And I think I do like watching Homer-centric episodes as well. So obviously that comes into it as well.
That's this one for sure, yeah. Yeah, I really like this episode too. It's got a bunch of like classic moments from the show, and like you said, it really peers under the hood of what makes Homer tick a lot. I when it comes to season 4, some of the other episodes that we haven't talked about are like Mr. Plow, or there's just so many great episodes. It was interesting that I read a thing about this episode that other than Mr. Plow and more the Christmassy episodes, this was one of the few episodes that showed snow.
Oh yeah, I do remember reading that as well. Yeah,
that was pretty interesting. But well, guys, there you go. We've done 2 Simpsons games and 2 Simpsons episodes of the show. We probably will do this again. I think we've gone an hour and a half without even trying, and I've actually been trying to keep us on track because I knew this one would be dangerous for us to just espouse upon espouse upon espouse because we're both very passionate about the show.
Nerds.
Simpsons nerds. We kicked around the idea about doing this one and maybe doing an episode about the Futurama game. Have you ever played the Futurama game? There's a PS2 era game, I think, I'd have to emulate it to actually play it again, but I played it back in the day. It was written like this episode, or like some of the episodes or games from The Simpsons of the day. It was written by the showrunners. Voice acting's there. It has some of the shortcomings that come with that era of gaming, but it might be interesting also to do another episode like this where we both play that game, talk about it, and then talk about our favorite Futurama episodes that we like.
I think that sounds fun.
I had a lot of fun doing this. Thanks for doing this with me. Guys, if you would please go out on Twitter and tweet at Go Lurk Yourself Podcast, all one word. Tell us what your favorite episode of The Simpsons is, and tell us of the 2 that we just did, which were Last Exit Springfield and Homer the Heretic, both season 4, which of those 2 is better. I'm curious to see what you guys have to say. Cherry, how can people reach out to you on Twitter if they want?
Thank you for asking, Crum. People can get hold of me on Twitter. I am at cherrycake518. What about yourself?
I'm at crunky_Twitch. Speaking of Twitch, are you streaming these days?
Yes.
Good answer.
I don't do it as often these days, but I will get back into it. If you guys are interested, you can catch me at twitch.tv/cherrycaketv.
And you play a lot of Switch games, and I think you said you might be playing some Mario Maker on the Wii U soon.
Hopefully soon, yes.
Nice. I'm also on Twitch, even though Cherry didn't ask me. I'm sure she was going to.
Wait, what? You're on Twitch?
According to the script I have here. Yeah, I'm twitch.tv/crunky. I've been playing a lot of PUBG. I'm trying to stream some other games too. I'm one of the episodes of the podcast I want to do, Cherry, is talk about the Team Eco group out of Japan, development house behind the game Eco, Shadow of the Colossus, and The Last Guardian. I'm about halfway through the Shadow of the Colossus remastered now, and I'm going to do Last Guardian next. And then I'd love to talk about those games. They're some of the top tier artistic games in the medium, I think. And despite sometimes me wanting to bash my head against the wall over some of the controls, I absolutely have been enjoying the hell out of Shadow of the Colossus. So look forward to that future episode. Also look forward to an episode that I think I'm going to record right after we're done here, Cherry, with Dee. We're going to talk about Dark Souls.
Yeah, look forward to that next week.
I know you're excited about that. So excited about Dark Souls, I couldn't even talk Cherry into doing the
episode. I thank myself lucky for that.
By the way, Cherry, where can they find your blog? Cherry did a nice write-up about her experience with Dark Souls and published it earlier this week. Last week?
It was the end of last week, I believe, or the middle of last week. You can find that at golurkyourself.blogspot.co.uk. It's a bit of a mouthful, but if you go there, I do try to update when I can, but it is centered around video games, basically my experiences and things that are going on in the video game world.
Yeah, so she doesn't post that every day, but you know, if you want to stay up to date on what she has to say about video games, and I definitely would recommend it, you know, follow there. That way you get notifications whenever she puts something up, and maybe if she gets a few new followers, she'll be motivated to write more.
Well, you never know.
Right? And just so I get that right, it's golickerself.blogspot.co.uk.
Yes, that's correct.
She lives in this weird other place called the United Kingdom.
Yeah.
So they don't have
That is a
.com
weird
there.
place.
Well, Cherry, thanks so much for being here. I had a lot of fun.
Me too. It was very a trip down nostalgia road, I guess. So thank you.
Exactly. Well, everybody, thank you for being here, and we will see you on the next one.
Bye.
Bye-bye.